The Mojave Desert stretched endlessly in every direction, a sea of sand and scrub brush baking under the merciless California sun. Heat waves shimmered above the cracked earth, distorting the horizon into liquid mirages that promised water where none existed. The temperature had climbed past 104 degrees an hour ago, and it wasn't even noon yet. Ilara Thornwick lay perfectly still on a rocky outcrop, her small frame pressed against stone that radiated heat like a griddle. At 5'3" and barely 118 pounds, she looked more like a graduate student than what she actually was, a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Through the loopholed Mark V scope mounted on her rifle, she watched a mule deer buck move through the sparse vegetation 1,856 yards away. That was over a mile. Most people couldn't even see the animal at that distance without optics. Ilara could put a bullet through its skull. The rifle itself was a relic, an M24 sniper weapon system manufactured in 1988. It had seen combat in Desert Storm, Somalia, and a dozen classified operations that would never appear in any official record. The stock was worn smooth from decades of use, the metal darkened by gun oil and sweat and blood. Serial number ST3-0847, issued to Chief Daniel Reaper Thornwick of SEAL Team 3 on November 12, 1988, 2 years before the liberation of Kuwait, Ilara's father. The buck stopped, lifted its head, tested the wind. Ilara's breathing slowed. 4 count in, hold. 4 count out, hold. Her heart rate dropped from 68 beats per minute to 52. Training, discipline, the lessons Reaper had drilled into her since she was 11 years old, since the day her world collapsed and he became the only family she had left. At this distance, she had to account for everything. Bullet drop, 41.7 minutes of angle. Wind drift, the breeze was gusting at 14 miles per hour from her 4 o'clock position. Call it 2 MOA of correction. Temperature, the heat would expand the propellant, increase the muzzle velocity slightly, maybe 0.3 MOA adjustment. Altitude, 3,800 feet above sea level, thinner air, less resistance. And then there was the Coriolis effect, the rotation of the Earth itself pulling the bullet slightly right, 0.4 MOA at this range. She made the calculations in 4 seconds. Math that would take most people a calculator in 5 minutes. Reaper had made her do it in her head, over and over, until the numbers became instinct, until ballistics lived in her bones rather than her brain. The crosshairs settled on a spot 2 feet above the buck's head and 20 inches to the left. Not where the animal was, where the bullet would be when physics and time and distance all converged into a single moment of absolute precision. Ilara's finger rested on the trigger, not pulling, not yet, just there, waiting for the space between heartbeats. Thump, thump. Wait. Thump, thump. Now. She squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The suppressor reduced the crack to a sharp bark that echoed once across the desert and died. The .300 Winchester Magnum round left the barrel at 2,850 feet per second. Time to target, 5.9 seconds. Ilara didn't move, didn't blink, just watched through the scope. The buck's head snapped sideways. It dropped like someone had cut its strings. Clean, instant, humane. Ilara let out her breath slowly, lowered the rifle, and allowed herself the smallest smile. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, rough as gravel and warm as summer. At that range, Ilara girl, you're not shooting where the target is. You're shooting where God and physics say it's going to be. And if you've done everything right, they'll both be in the same place. She whispered to the desert wind. Still got it, Dad, just like Kuwait. That had been 3 months ago, 3 months before everything changed. Naval Base San Diego sprawled across hundreds of acres of prime California coastline, home to the largest concentration of naval power on the West Coast. Destroyers, Cruisers, amphibious assault ships, and submarines lined the piers like sleeping giants. And somewhere in the maze of administrative buildings, training facilities, and operational compounds was the headquarters of Naval Special Warfare Command, the SEALs. Ilara Thornwick walked through the gates at 7:30 on a Monday morning, just like she had every weekday for the past 2 years. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and a navy windbreaker with her contractor ID clipped to the pocket. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry except for a silver chain around her neck, with her father's dog tags hanging beneath her shirt, hidden from view. She looked like exactly what she was supposed to be, a civilian IT contractor. Young, quiet, forgettable. The kind of person who fixed computers when they broke and disappeared into the background the moment the work was done. That was the idea anyway. But Ilara Thornwick wasn't just an IT contractor. She was an NSA cyber analyst on long-term assignment, embedded at Naval Special Warfare Command, with top-secret clearance and access to systems that didn't officially exist. Her job was to monitor classified networks, hunt for foreign intrusions, and keep America's most elite warriors connected to the intelligence they needed to stay alive. Last month, she'd identified and neutralized a Chinese military cyber intrusion into SEAL communication protocols. The month before that, she tracked Russian GRU hackers attempting to penetrate drone surveillance systems. Her work had prevented the compromise of 3 active operations and saved lives in 2 theaters. Nobody here knew that. They saw the IT girl who fixed laptops. The Naval Special Warfare Center occupied a secured compound within the larger base. More fences, more checkpoints, more guards with M24 rifles and hard eyes that assessed every person who walked through their gates. Ilara nodded to the Marine corporal at the entry control point. He'd seen her 100 times before. "Morning, Miss Thornwick." "Morning, Corporal Davis." He waved her through without checking her bag. She headed for Building 7, a nondescript 3-story structure that housed the administrative and support offices. Her domain. The IT department was on the 2nd floor, a cluster of cubicles and server rooms that hummed with the white noise of cooling fans and air conditioning. Ilara's desk was in the corner, deliberately positioned where she could see both exits and had her back to a solid wall. Old habits, Reaper's lessons. Always know where the exits are. Never sit with your back to a door. Her supervisor, a retired Navy chief named Patterson, looked up from his computer as she walked in. "Morning, Ilara. We've got a laptop down in Building 3. Lieutenant Brennan says it won't connect to the network." "I'll take care of it." She grabbed her toolkit, a backpack filled with cables, diagnostic tools, and a portable hard drive, and headed back out. Building 3 was the Special Warfare Training Facility, where SEAL candidates and operators went through continuous training cycles. Ilara had been there dozens of times. The place always smelled like gun oil and sweat, and the particular intensity of men preparing for violence. Lieutenant Colt Brennan was in one of the small offices on the 1st floor, frowning at his laptop like it had personally offended him. He was 32, broad-shouldered, with the kind of casual confidence that came from knowing he was one of the best trained warriors on the planet. SEAL Team 7, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Syria, call sign, Hammer. He looked up when Ilara knocked on the open door. His expression shifted from frustration to something else. Amusement, maybe, or condescension. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. "Hey, sweetheart, you're from IT, right?" Ilara kept her face neutral. "Yes, sir. I hear you're having network issues." "Yeah, this thing won't connect to anything. I've got a brief in 30 minutes, and I need to pull up some files." He gestured at the laptop. "Can you work your magic?" She sat down, pulled up a chair. The problem was immediately obvious. Someone had disabled the wireless adapter in the device manager. Probably accidentally, hunting around in settings they didn't understand. 2 clicks, and it was fixed. "You're all set, sir." Brennan blinked. That's it? What was wrong with it? The wireless adapter was disabled. It happens sometimes. She started packing up her tools. Wait, that's all? I thought it was something serious. He laughed, shook his head. Man, I feel like an idiot calling IT for that. No problem, sir. That's what we're here for. As she turned to leave, Brennan called after her. Hey, what's your name? Ilara Thornwick. Well, thanks, Ilara. You saved my ass, he grinned. You know, you should come out to the range sometime. See what we do here. Might be more exciting than fixing computers all day. Ilara paused at the door, looked back at him. For just a moment, she considered telling him that she'd probably logged more trigger time than half his team, that she could outshoot most of the instructors on this base, that the rifle locked in the trunk of her car right now had more combat experience than he'd see in his entire career. Instead, she smiled politely. Maybe someday, sir. Thanks for the offer. She walked away, leaving Brennan to his brief and his casual dismissal of the IT girl who'd fixed his computer. It was always like this. She'd learned to accept it. Reaper had prepared her for it. Don't ever let them know how good you are, he'd told her once, sitting on the porch of his cabin in Lake Arrowhead, cleaning that same M24 rifle. Not until you have to prove it. Let them underestimate you, Ilara. It's the greatest advantage you'll ever have. She'd been 16 then, already shooting out to 1,200 yards, already better than 90% of the snipers in the United States military. But nobody knew that. That was the point. The memory came unbidden, as it often did. Ilara was 11 years old. November 2008. The phone call came at 3 in the morning, and even through the fog of sleep, she knew something terrible had happened. Her aunt's voice on the phone, breaking. Ilara, honey, there's been an accident. Your parents... But it hadn't been an accident. Her father, Marcus Thornwick, was a CIA operations officer. Her mother, Dr. Rebecca Thornwick, was an NSA cryptanalyst. They'd been working a joint operation, tracking a terrorist network's financial flows through encrypted communications. They were close to identifying the network's leader, close to dismantling the entire organization. On November 18, 2008, their car went off a mountain road in Virginia. Black ice, the police said. Tragic accident. Nothing suspicious. Except there was no black ice that night. The temperature had been 47 degrees. The agency investigation, classified and quiet, concluded what Ilara wouldn't learn until years later. Their car had been forced off the road. Professional hit. The terrorist network they'd been hunting had identified them first. Two of America's best intelligence officers murdered and made to look like an accident. Ilara had lost her parents in a single night and gained a new guardian. Daniel Reaper Thornwick arrived at her aunt's house 3 days after the funeral. 52 years old, weathered like ancient wood, with sharp blue eyes that never seemed to miss anything. He was Marcus Thornwick's older brother, a Navy SEAL, recently retired after 30 years in the teams. Come on, Ilara girl, he'd said, his voice rough but somehow gentle. Let's go home. Home was a cabin in the mountains above Lake Arrowhead. Remote, quiet, safe. Reaper had bought it after retiring from active duty, a place to disappear after 3 decades of classified violence. For the first 6 months, they barely spoke. Reaper understood grief. He'd lost teammates, friends, brothers. He gave her space to mourn, to process, to slowly piece herself back together. And then one morning, when the worst of the pain had dulled from sharp agony to constant ache, he'd said, "Come on, let's go shoot." The rifle was taller than she was, a Remington 700 hunting rifle. Not the M24 yet, that would come later. They hiked up into the mountains behind the cabin, to a natural shooting gallery Reaper had set up with steel targets at various ranges. Shooting isn't about strength, Reaper had said, positioning her behind the rifle. It's about patience, control, understanding that the gun is just a tool. You're the weapon. He taught her to read the wind, to calculate distances by eye, to control her breathing, her heartbeat, her mind. Most kids her age were playing video games or hanging out at the mall. Ilara was learning to put holes in targets at 600 yards. By the time she was 16, Reaper had moved her up to the M24. His M24, the rifle he'd carried through 2 decades of classified operations. "This rifle has saved my life more times than I can count," he'd told her, handing it over with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. "It's not a toy. It's not even really a weapon. It's a responsibility. You understand?" "Yes, sir. When you shoot, you better be damn sure about what you're doing, because there's no taking it back. That bullet goes down range, someone's life changes. Maybe it ends. That's not something to take lightly." "I understand." He'd looked at her with those sharp blue eyes that never seemed to miss anything. "I know you do, Ilara. That's why I'm teaching you." They trained together until she left for college, computer science at UC San Diego. Ilara had planned to work in cybersecurity, use her brain instead of her trigger finger, honor her parents' legacy in intelligence work rather than her uncle's path of direct action. But Reaper had made sure she kept up her skills. Every weekend home they'd shoot. Every summer they'd train. And then, in the fall of 2017, Reaper collapsed in his cabin. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 18, stubborn to the end. Ilara had been there when he died, 21 years old, holding her uncle's hand in a hospice bed while he drifted in and out of consciousness. "The rifle's yours now," he'd whispered, his voice barely audible. "Everything I know, it's in you. Don't waste it, Ilara. Promise me." "I promise." "And Ilara, don't let them know. Not until you have to prove it. Make them respect you when it counts." Those had been his last coherent words. He died 6 hours later, at 03:47 on a Sunday morning, with Ilara sitting beside him, whispering promises she intended to keep. She'd inherited the cabin, the M24, and a lifetime of training that 99.9% of people would never understand. Ilara shook off the memory and focused on the present. She had 4 more service calls to complete before lunch. Another laptop, a printer that wouldn't connect, a software installation, and a routine security check on one of the classified networks. Standard stuff. Nobody knew that the routine security check involved hunting for advanced, persistent threats from Chinese and Russian intelligence services. That was fine. Invisible was safe. Invisible kept her alive. By noon, she'd worked her way through the list and headed to the base cafeteria. The place was packed with sailors and Marines in uniform, a few officers and scattered civilians like herself. She grabbed a sandwich and found an empty table in the corner, back to the wall, eyes on the exits. She'd just taken her first bite when the cafeteria's PA system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. Mandatory all-hands briefing in the base theater at 1300 hours. Repeat, mandatory all-hands at 1300. That is all." Ilara checked her watch. 12:15. She had 45 minutes. The theater was in Building 1, the main headquarters structure. By the time Ilara arrived, the parking lot was already filling up. Personnel streamed toward the building in groups, speculating about what the briefing might be about. Budget cuts, new deployment cycle, security threat. Ilara filed in with everyone else, found a seat in the back row. The theater could hold maybe 400 people, and it was nearly full. Officers and enlisted, SEALs and support staff, active duty and civilian contractors. Whatever this was about, it was big enough to pull everyone together. At exactly 1300 hours, the lights dimmed, and Rear Admiral Garrett Blackwell walked onto the stage. Blackwell was 58 years old and looked like he could still run a marathon in under 3 hours. Lean, hard, with gray hair cut high and tight, and eyes that had seen combat on 4 continents. He'd started as a SEAL operator in the 80s, worked his way up through the ranks, and now commanded all of Naval Special Warfare West Coast. Men like Blackwell didn't call all-hands meetings unless it mattered. He stood at the podium, waited for the murmur of conversation to die down, and spoke. His voice carried authority that needed no amplification. Good afternoon. I'll keep this brief because I know you all have work to do. I'm here to announce Operation Spear Tip. A PowerPoint slide appeared on the screen behind him. The title, Operation Spear Tip, Naval Special Warfare Sniper Competition. Starting next month, we're holding a sniper competition open to all military personnel attached to this command. SEALs, Marines, Army Special Forces on joint assignment, and anyone else who thinks they can shoot. Blackwell's expression was neutral, but there was something in his eyes, a challenge. The competition will take place over 4 days. Long-range, precision shooting at distances from 600 to 1,500 yards. We'll test every skill that matters: ballistics, wind reading, position shooting, moving targets, and stress management. Another slide, prize information. First place receives $50,000 and an automatic slot in the Advanced Sniper course at Fort Benning. Second and third place receive $10,000 each. But more than that, you'll earn the right to say you're the best precision shooter in naval special warfare. A ripple of interest moved through the crowd. $50,000 was serious money, and the Advanced Sniper course was considered the pinnacle of long-range shooting instruction in the U.S. military. Blackwell waited for the murmurs to subside. Now here's the interesting part. This competition is open to everyone on this base, military and civilian. If you work here, you can register. I don't care if you're a SEAL team operator or a supply clerk or an IT contractor. If you can shoot, you can compete. The room erupted. Ilara heard laughter from the SEALs sitting a few rows ahead of her. One of them, she recognized Lieutenant Derek Stone from SEAL Team 5, turned to his buddy and said loudly enough for half the room to hear, "Can you imagine some supply clerk trying to compete with operators? This is going to be comedy gold." His friend grinned. "My money's on some boot lieutenant who thinks Call of Duty counts as training." More laughter. Stone was 34, arrogant, and by all accounts, an exceptional shooter. He'd won last year's spear tip competition with a score of 238 out of 250, the current record. He clearly expected to defend his title against other elite operators, not civilians. Blackwell let it run for a moment, then raised his hand. Silence fell instantly. "I know what some of you are thinking, that this is a waste of time, that only the special operations community has a chance. Maybe you're right." His eyes swept the room. "Or maybe someone's going to surprise you. Registration opens tomorrow at 800. Competition starts in 3 weeks. If you want in, talk to your chain of command." He paused, seemed to consider saying something else, then just nodded. "That's all. Dismissed." The theater emptied in controlled chaos of conversations and speculation. Ilara stayed in her seat, watching people file out. She could hear fragments of conversation. Waste of time for anyone who's not an operator. Probably just Blackwell's way of boosting morale. Bet you $20 no civilian even registers. Ilara sat very still, feeling the weight of her father's dog tags against her chest, under her shirt, hidden from everyone. She thought about that buck in the Mojave, about 1,856 yards, about 5.9 seconds of flight time, and math that she could do faster than most people could read a menu. She thought about Reaper's voice. "Don't let them know, not until you have to prove it." Maybe it was time to prove it. Ilara stood up, made her way against the flow of people leaving, and headed toward the front of the theater. Blackwell was gathering his notes from the podium, talking with a couple of senior chiefs. She waited until they finished, then approached. Blackwell looked up, saw her, and his expression was politely neutral. He didn't know her. Why would he? She was just another contractor. "Sir, I'd like to register for the competition." Blackwell studied her for a moment. Ilara was suddenly very aware of how young she must look to him. 27, barely over 5 feet, 118 pounds. The guy probably had combat boots that weighed more than her. "What's your name, miss?" "Ilara Thornwick, sir." Something flickered across Blackwell's face, just for an instant, like he'd heard a ghost whisper. Thornwick, he repeated softly, then louder. You're a contractor, correct? Yes, sir, IT department. Have you shot competitively before? No, sir. Do you own a rifle? Yes, sir. What kind? Ilara met his eyes. This was it, the moment she stopped being invisible. M24 sniper weapon system, sir. Serial number ST3-0847, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum. The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. Blackwell stared at her like he'd just seen a dead man walk through the wall. The M24 wasn't a civilian rifle. It was military issue, specifically SEAL issue. And that serial number, where did you get an M24? It was my father's, sir. And what was your father's name? Ilara took a breath. This was the moment, the cliff edge. Once she stepped off, there was no going back. Chief Daniel Thornwick, sir. SEAL Team 3, 1983 to 2013. Blackwell set down his notes very carefully. His hand, Ilara noticed, was shaking slightly. Reaper Thornwick, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Reaper Thornwick was your father. Yes, sir. Blackwell seemed to age 10 years in 10 seconds. He pulled out a chair, sat down heavily, and looked at Ilara with eyes that held ghosts. I served with your father. Kuwait, 91. Fallujah, 04. He saved my life in Fallujah. Ambush. I was pinned down, 3 insurgents closing in. Your father put all 3 down from 1,300 yards. 3 shots, 4 seconds, 3 kills. He paused. Reaper Thornwick was one of the finest snipers I ever knew. Maybe the finest. His voice cracked on the last word. I didn't know he had a daughter. He never mentioned family. My parents kept me classified, sir. They were agency, both of them. When they died, Reaper took custody. He trained me from 11 to 21, taught me everything he knew. Blackwell processed this. Reaper died in 2019. Yes, sir. Pancreatic cancer. I'm sorry. I didn't know. We'd lost touch after he retired. Blackwell looked at her differently now, not as a contractor, as someone connected to a man he clearly respected, maybe even loved. Miss Thornwick, do you understand what you're signing up for? These are Navy SEALs, Marine Scout Snipers, Army Rangers, some of the best shooters in the world. This isn't a game. I understand, sir. Why do you want to do this? Ilara thought about lying, about saying something noble about honoring her father's memory or testing herself. But Reaper had always insisted on honesty when it mattered. Because he trained me, sir, and I want to know if I'm as good as he thought I was. Blackwell studied her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Registration opens tomorrow at 0800, Building 7, 3rd floor. You'll need to bring your rifle for inspection and safety check. If it passes, you're in. Thank you, sir. Ilara turned to go. Miss Thornwick, she looked back. Your father was the best. If he trained you... Blackwell shook his head, and for the first time, he smiled. This is going to be very interesting. Yes, sir, I think it will be. She walked out of the theater into the bright San Diego afternoon, feeling lighter than she had in years. Behind her, she didn't see Blackwell pull out his phone and dial a number he hadn't called in months. The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. Blackwell. Been a while. Hawk, you sitting down? Should I be? Reaper Thornwick's daughter just registered for Spear Tip. A long pause. Reaper had a daughter? Apparently so, and she claims he trained her to shoot. She's got his M24, serial ST3-0847. Another pause, longer this time. Well, hell, this just got interesting. That's what I said. Think she's any good? I don't know, but I'm damn sure going to find out. I'll be at registration tomorrow. I owe Reaper that much. Blackwell ended the call and stood alone on the empty stage, remembering a man who could put bullets through targets at distances that shouldn't have been possible. Remembering a voice rough as gravel. Blackwell, the secret to long-range shooting isn't the rifle, it's the shooter. You find someone with the gift, someone with the discipline, and you can make miracles happen. Blackwell whispered to the empty room, "If she's half as good as you were, Reaper, those boys are in for a hell of a surprise." The week that followed was brutal for Alara in ways that had nothing to do with preparation. Word spread fast in the close-knit special warfare community. The IT girl had registered for Spear Tip. By Wednesday morning, Alara couldn't walk through the compound without hearing whispers or seeing poorly concealed smirks. Someone had created a betting pool on how badly she'd do. The over-under was whether she'd quit before the competition started or make it through the first day. The odds were heavily weighted toward quits before day one. Lieutenant Colt Brennan was particularly amused. He caught up with Alara in the hallway outside Building 7 on Thursday morning, flanked by two of his teammates. His grin was wide and not particularly kind. "Hey, Alara, heard you registered for the shoot." He exchanged glances with his buddies. "That's really brave of you." "Thank you, sir." "No, seriously, most people would be embarrassed to go up against SEALs when they don't have the training. But you're going for it. That's confidence, or something." His buddies laughed. One of them, a stocky petty officer named Walsh, added, "My money's on her making it to the rifle inspection, and then realizing she's in over her head." "I appreciate your concern, sir," Alara said, keeping her voice level. "I guess we'll see on Saturday." Brennan's expression softened slightly, as if he suddenly felt bad for mocking her. "Look, no hard feelings. I'll make you a deal. You make it into the top 30, I'll buy you dinner." Because that would mean the entire bottom 20 shooters didn't show up. More laughter from his friends. Alara could feel anger building in her chest, hot and sharp. 100 responses came to mind, each more cutting than the last. But Reaper's voice was there, steady and calm, the way it always was when she needed it most. "Let them talk, Alara girl. Words don't mean a damn thing. It's what you do when it counts that matters." She smiled politely. "I appreciate the offer, sir. Maybe I'll take you up on that." She walked away, leaving Brennan and his friends to their jokes. Her hands didn't shake until she reached her cubicle. Then she sat down, gripped the edge of her desk, and breathed. 4 count in, hold. 4 count out, hold. The anger faded. Discipline took its place. That evening, alone in the Lake Arrowhead cabin, Alara descended the wooden stairs into the basement. Most people who visited the cabin never knew this room existed. Reaper had built it himself, dug into the hillside, accessible only through a hidden door in the floor of the master bedroom closet. The room was 20 feet by 30, concrete walls, ventilated, temperature-controlled. On one wall hung a dozen photographs, Reaper with his SEAL team in various locations around the world, most of them still classified even now. Kuwait, Somalia, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Places where American power projected quietly, lethally, in the dark. On another wall, detailed ballistics charts, wind tables, and range cards for locations from the Persian Gulf to the Hindu Kush to places that didn't officially exist. And in the center of the room, on a workbench built from solid oak, the M24. Alara had cleaned it 3 days ago, but she cleaned it again now. Stripped it down to every component, bolt assembly, barrel, stock, trigger group. She inspected each piece with the meticulous care Reaper had drilled into her. A weapon is only as reliable as its maintenance. Treat it like your life depends on it, because someday it will. She reassembled the rifle in 41 seconds. SEAL standard was 60. She'd been doing it since she was 16. The rifle was more than just a tool. It was a connection to the man who'd raised her, taught her, shaped her into something most people would never understand. Every scratch on the stock had a story. Every mark on the metal had been earned. This rifle had spoken in 15 countries, in deserts, in jungles, in mountains, in the hands of one of the best snipers who'd ever lived. Now it was hers. Her turn to prove it wasn't just the rifle that made the shooter. Ilara mounted the rifle on a lead sled rest, looked through the scope at a target she'd mounted on the far wall of the basement. She dry-fired, pulling the trigger with no ammunition, just to practice the mechanics. 100 times, then 100 more, then another 100. By midnight, her trigger finger was steady as stone, and her breathing was automatic. 4 count in, hold, 4 count out. Between heartbeats, every single time. Reaper's voice echoed in the concrete room. Perfect practice makes perfect performance. Every trigger pull is either training you to do it right or training you to do it wrong. There is no neutral. Choose wisely. Ilara chose wisely. She always had. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze from the west. Competition day, the first of 4 that would determine who was the best precision shooter in naval special warfare. Ilara arrived at the main range complex at 0630, 30 minutes early. She wore simple outdoor clothing, hiking pants, a moisture-wicking shirt, a ball cap with her hair tucked up underneath. The M24 was in a hard case in the back of her truck, along with her spotting scope, rangefinder, weather meter, and 300 rounds of hand-loaded ammunition that Reaper had made himself before he got sick. The range was already busy. 50 competitors were registered, and most of them were there early, checking equipment, talking strategy, sizing up the competition. Ilara recognized at least 30 SEALs, a dozen Marines, 5 Army Rangers on joint assignment, and a handful of others she didn't know. And then there was her, the only woman, the only civilian, the only person who looked like they should be serving coffee instead of shooting rifles. She parked her truck, grabbed her gear, and headed toward the check-in table. The Marine sergeant running registration looked up, saw her, and blinked. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Ilara Thornwick. "I'm registered." He checked his list, found her name, and nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am, I'll need to see your rifle for safety inspection." Ilara set the case on the table, opened it. The sergeant's eyes widened. "That's an M24. "Yes." Where did you get that?" "It belonged to my father, Chief Daniel Thornwick, SEAL Team 3. The sergeant's expression shifted from surprise to something like respect. "I've heard of him. Reaper. Is it true he could shoot 1,800 yards? 2,000 on a good day." The sergeant whistled low. "Well, ma'am, if you're even half as good as he was." He inspected the rifle, checked the serial number against a database, verified the scope mounting, confirmed the safety mechanisms. Everything was perfect. Reaper had maintained this weapon like a sacred relic. "You're all set." He handed her a competition packet. "Lane assignments are in there. First relay starts at 0800. "Thank you, Sergeant." Ilara found an empty bench away from the main groups and began her pre-competition ritual. She'd practiced the sequence 10,000 times. Set up rifle, check scope, confirm 0, prepare ammunition, breathe. She was loading magazines when a shadow fell across the bench. Ilara looked up into the weathered face of a man in his mid-40s, built like a truck with eyes that had seen more than most people could imagine. Master Chief Marcus Hawk Crawford. 23 years in the teams, multiple deployments to every hotspot from the Balkans to Syria. And according to the competition roster, the odds-on favorite to win Spear Tip. "You're Reaper's daughter," Hawk said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Master Chief." "He trained you?" "Yes." Hawk studied her for a long moment. His gaze wasn't condescending or amused like the others. It was assessing, professional. The look of someone who recognized another professional, regardless of age or gender or appearance. "Blackwell called me, told me you registered. I didn't believe him." Hawk gestured to the bench. "Mind if I sit?" "Please." He sat down, and for a moment, He just looked at the M24 lying in its case. His hand reached out, hesitated, then touched the stock gently, reverently. Serial ST3-0847. I know this rifle. Alara waited. Iraq, 2006. Ramadi. I was pinned down in a building. 3 insurgents had me dead to rights. Your father put all 3 down from 1,100 yards. Hawk's voice was rough. Headshots, 3 targets, 4 seconds. I owed him my life, still do. He looked at Alara directly. But there's more. I was your father's spotter in Desert Storm. February 1991, Highway of Death. The Republican Guard was retreating from Kuwait City. We were on a ridge overlooking the convoy. Command wanted confirmation on a high-value target, an Iraqi colonel coordinating the withdrawal. Your father put him down from 2,100 yards. Sandstorm conditions. Wind at 18 miles per hour. It was the longest confirmed kill shot of the entire war. Hawk paused. I was lying next to him when he took that shot. I saw him do the impossible. And that rifle in your hands? That's the rifle that made it happen. That rifle has killed 47 enemy combatants across 5 wars. Alara felt tears threatening but forced them back. He never told me about Kuwait. He never talked about his missions. That was Reaper. Never talked about what he did, just kept doing it. Hawk's expression softened. What's your best distance, Miss Thornwick? 1,856 yards. Mule deer buck. Mojave Desert. 3 months ago. Headshot. Hawk's eyebrows rose. 1,856. Moving target? Walking slow. Wind 12 miles per hour, variable. Hawk let out a breath. Well, hell, Reaper really did train you. He offered his hand. Good luck today, Miss Thornwick. You honor his memory by being here. They shook. Hawk walked away, and Alara saw him say something to a group of SEALs nearby. They all turned to look at her. The mockery from earlier in the week was gone from their expressions. Now they just looked curious, cautious even. At 07:45, Rear Admiral Blackwell walked onto the range with a megaphone. Good morning, shooters. Welcome to Operation Spear Tip. His voice carried across the range, sharp and clear. You all know the rules. Today is qualification day. 600 yards, 5 shots, 5 minutes. You need a minimum score of 40 out of 50 to advance to day 2. Top 30 scores regardless of qualifying threshold. Any questions? None. Outstanding. First relay to the line. That's shooters 1 through 10. Alara checked her packet. She was shooter number 43. 4th relay. She had time to observe. The first relay moved to their lanes. 10 shooters, 10 targets at 600 yards. 600 was considered the bread and butter range for military snipers. Not too close, not too far. A competent shooter should hit center mass every time. Blackwell raised his hand. Relay 1, make ready. The sound of bolts sliding home, magazines seating, safeties clicking off. Relay 1, commence firing. 10 rifles spoke almost simultaneously. Alara watched through her spotting scope, evaluating. 8 hits on target, 1 hit low and right, 1 complete miss. The firing continued, 5 shots each. When it was done, the scores were posted on a digital board. 3 perfect scores in the first relay. Alara wasn't surprised. These were SEALs. 600 yards was their neighborhood. Relays 2 and 3 followed. More perfect scores. More near-perfect scores. A handful of shooters eliminated. By the time the 4th relay was called, 27 shooters had posted scores. 15 of them had perfect 50s. This was going to be a high-level competition. Relay 4 to the line. Alara stood, gathered her rifle and equipment, and walked to lane 43. She could feel eyes on her, hear whispers. The betting pool was probably getting very active right now. She set up her shooting position. Prone, bipod deployed, rifle solid, scope adjusted for 600 yards. She'd shot this distance 10,000 times. This was nothing. Blackwell's voice. Relay 4, make ready. Ilara chambered around, felt the bolt slide home with mechanical precision. Safety off, crosshairs on target, breathing steady. Relay 4, commence firing. The world narrowed to the scope, the reticle, the target 600 yards away. Ilara's first shot broke clean. Through the scope, she saw the bullet impact center mass. She worked the bolt. Second round, same sight picture, same breathing, same trigger press. Bullseye. Third round, 10 ring. Fourth round, clean hit. Fifth round, solid impact. Ilara made the rifle safe, stood up, and waited for the scores. The board updated. Shooter 43, 50, 50. Perfect. She heard someone nearby say, "Holy shit, the IT girl just shot perfect." Ilara kept her expression neutral, started gathering her equipment. Around her, the attitude had shifted. Not mockery now, not quite respect, but something closer. Attention. Hawk caught her eye from across the range, gave her a small nod. Blackwell was watching too, his expression unreadable. The remaining relays fired. When all 50 shooters had posted scores, 31 had qualified. 8 of them had perfect 50s. Ilara was one of them. Blackwell took the megaphone again. "Well done, shooters. For those who qualified, day 2 is next Saturday, same time. 800 to 1,000 yards, changing conditions. For everyone else, thank you for competing. Dismissed." As people started to leave, Lieutenant Brennan appeared in front of Ilara. The smug confidence from earlier in the week was gone. Now he just looked uncomfortable. "So, Ilara, that was some good shooting." "Thank you, sir. I guess I underestimated you. I apologize for that, for what I said on Thursday." "Most people do, sir." She shouldered her rifle case. "See you next week." She walked away, leaving Brennan standing there looking like he'd just been politely slapped. Ilara made it to her truck before she allowed herself to smile. Reaper's voice in her head. "First step, Ilara girl. Let them see you're serious. Now comes the real work." She drove home to Lake Arrowhead, cleaned her rifle, and prepared for day 2. 600 yards was the warm-up. The real competition was just beginning. Monday morning, Ilara arrived at work to find her desk covered with printouts. Someone had pulled up the competition scores from Saturday and highlighted her name. Shooter 43, Ilara Thornwick, 50 out of 50. One of only 8 perfect scores in a field that included some of the best snipers in the United States military. The note attached said simply, "Not bad for an IT girl." Ilara didn't know if it was meant as a compliment or a challenge. She filed the papers away and got to work. She had computers to fix, networks to maintain, and a life to live that existed outside of 15 seconds on a firing line. But the world had shifted. People who'd never spoken to her before nodded when she walked past. SEALs who'd treated her like furniture suddenly remembered her name. The Marine corporal at the gate gave her a fist bump on Tuesday morning. "Heard you lit it up on Saturday, Miss Thornwick. Way to represent." It was surreal. 7 days ago, she was invisible. Now she was the curiosity, the anomaly, the girl who could shoot. Not everyone was thrilled about it. Lieutenant Derek Stone avoided her completely. When she had to service a computer in his building on Tuesday afternoon, he suddenly had urgent business elsewhere. His teammates were less subtle. Ilara overheard one of them in the hallway, a petty officer named Miller, talking to Walsh. "Probably beginner's luck. Wait until they get to real distances. She'll crack." "Maybe," Walsh replied. "But did you see Stone's face when her score posted? He looked like someone had kicked him." "Stone's got this locked. He shot 238 last year. He'll defend his title." "Against her? I don't know, man. Reaper's daughter? That's some serious lineage." Ilara kept walking, didn't acknowledge that she'd heard, but she filed the information away. Stone was worried. That was interesting. What she didn't know yet was why. Wednesday evening, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Thornwick," the voice was familiar, rough and weathered. "Master Chief Hawk Crawford." "Yes, Master Chief. Call me Alara." "Hawk, listen, I'm calling because I wanted to give you a heads up about Saturday." Ilara sat down on her cabin's front porch, watching the sun set over Lake Arrowhead. "What kind of heads up?" "Day 2 is where the competition really starts. 800 to 1,000 yards. And they're going to throw conditions at you. Wind, mirage, moving targets. They want to see who can adapt and who falls apart when the variables stack up." "I understand. I'm sure you do. Reaper trained you. But there's something else." Hawk paused. "There are some guys who aren't happy about Saturday, about you shooting perfect. They think it makes them look bad. That's not my problem." "No, it's not. But I wanted you to know. Keep your head on a swivel. Some of these boys have egos bigger than their skill sets. They might try to get in your head. Trash talk, mind games. Don't let them." Alara smiled into the phone. "Master Chief, I've been dealing with that my whole life. I'll be fine." "I know you will. But I also know Reaper would want someone watching your back. So I'm watching. See you Saturday." The line went dead. Ilara sat on the porch until full dark, thinking about what Hawk had said. Mind games, psychological warfare. It made sense. When everyone was shooting at the same targets with similar equipment, the difference between winning and losing often came down to who could handle the pressure. Reaper had prepared her for that too. She remembered a conversation from years ago, sitting in this exact spot. She'd been 17, frustrated after missing several shots at 1,000 yards in gusty wind. "Ilara, girl, you know what separates a good sniper from a great one? Skill. Skill is table stakes. Everyone at the top level has skill. The difference is, up here." He tapped his temple. "It's the ability to quiet your mind when everything around you is chaos. When bullets are flying, when you're exhausted, when you've been in position for 18 hours and you're hungry and cold and you need to piss, can you still make the shot? That's what matters." How do you learn that? By doing it. By pushing yourself past where you think you can go and finding out you can go further. By failing and getting up and trying again. There's no shortcut, Alara. You just have to walk through the fire until the fire doesn't scare you anymore. She'd walked through plenty of fire since then. Not in combat she'd never served, but in the quiet, personal fires of loss and grief. In the bone-deep loneliness of being the only person who understood what Reaper had given her. This competition was just another kind of fire, and she intended to walk through it without getting burned. Thursday afternoon, Ilara was running diagnostics on a classified server when Lieutenant Stone appeared in the doorway of the server room. She looked up, surprised. He'd been avoiding her all week. "Lieutenant, can I help you with something?" Stone stepped inside, closed the door behind him. His expression was hard to read. Not hostile exactly, but not friendly either. "I wanted to talk to you about Saturday." "Okay. You shot well on day 1. Really well. Perfect score. That's impressive." "Thank you, sir. But day 2 is different. The distances are longer, the conditions are harder, the margin for error is basically 0. He paused. "I'm telling you this because I don't want you to be embarrassed. It might be better if you withdrew now. Go out on a high note." Ilara set down her diagnostic tablet and looked at him directly. "With respect, sir, I'm not withdrawing. You don't understand. This isn't about you. It's about what that rifle represents. Your father was a legend. Reaper Thornwick is a name that means something in the teams. And watching his daughter fail in front of 300 people, that would be difficult for everyone." Something in his tone made Alara's instincts flare. This wasn't concern, this was something else. "I appreciate your concern, Lieutenant, but I'm competing." Stone's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "That's my choice to make." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. Ilara stood in the server room, heart pounding. That hadn't been a friendly warning. That had been an attempt to intimidate her into quitting. The question was, why did Stone care so much? She pulled out her phone, opened an encrypted app, and sent a message to a contact at NSA headquarters. Within 20 minutes, she had Derek Stone's service record on her screen. SEAL Team 5, multiple deployments, excellent marksman, winner of last year's spear tip competition. But there was something else, something buried deeper. Stone's father, Gunnery Sergeant Robert Stone, United States Marine Corps, killed in action, Mogadishu, Somalia, October 3, 1993. The Black Hawk Down incident, 12 Marines dead, a national tragedy. Ilara cross-referenced the date, October 1993. She accessed another classified database, one she technically shouldn't have access to, but did anyway. SEAL Team 3 operational records. And there it was. Chief Daniel Thornwick had been in Mogadishu in October 1993, assigned to a joint task force. 3 days before the Black Hawk Down incident, Reaper had been positioned to take a shot on a Somali warlord. The target was in a marketplace. Intelligence indicated he'd be there at a specific time. Reaper had the shot. 940 yards. Moderate wind. Clean sight picture. He didn't take it. His after-action report, still classified, explained why. Target was in marketplace surrounded by approximately 60 civilians, including children. Shot had 40% probability of civilian casualties due to crowd density and target movement. I assessed risk as unacceptable and called off engagement. Command concurred. 3 days later, the warlord's militia ambushed the Marine unit that included Robert Stone. 12 dead, including Stone. The warlord escaped and wouldn't be captured for another 6 months. Ilara sat back, understanding flooding through her. Derek Stone blamed Reaper for his father's death. In Stone's mind, if Reaper had taken the shot, the warlord would have been dead, and the ambush would never have happened. His father would still be alive. It didn't matter that Reaper had made the right call, that 60 civilians would have died, that the ambush happened because of a betrayed local informant, not because a warlord survived. Stone had spent his entire adult life believing Reaper Thornwick was a coward who'd cost his father his life. And now Reaper's daughter was competing against him, carrying the same rifle, threatening to beat him. Ilara closed her laptop and sat in the quiet server room, processing. This wasn't just a competition anymore. This was personal. Stone wasn't trying to win. He was trying to destroy Reaper's legacy, and she was standing in his way. She pulled out her phone and called Hawk. "Hawk, it's Ilara. I need to tell you something." She explained what she'd found. When she finished, Hawk was silent for a long moment. "I was there," he said finally. "Mogadishu. I was Reaper's spotter on that op. He made the right call, Ilara. Command agreed. The intelligence was bad. That marketplace was packed. If he'd taken the shot and hit a civilian, it would have turned the whole city against us. Stone doesn't know that." "No, and I doubt he'd believe it even if you told him. Grief does strange things to people. Makes them need someone to blame." "What do I do?" "You compete. You shoot. You prove that Reaper trained someone who can beat Derek Stone on pure skill. That's the only language he'll understand." Ilara spent Friday evening in the basement, running through scenarios. 800 yards, 900, 1,000, variable wind, moving targets, heat mirage. She visualized each shot, each calculation, each breath. At midnight, she climbed the stairs, exhausted but ready. Tomorrow would test everything Reaper had taught her. Tomorrow would separate the competent from the exceptional. Tomorrow, Derek Stone would learn that Reaper Thornwick's legacy was alive and well. In the darkness of the cabin, Ilara whispered to the ghost of her father, "I won't let him dishonor you. I promise." The wind outside seemed to whisper back, carrying a voice she knew was just memory, but felt real anyway. "Show them what you're made of, Ilara girl. Make them remember the name Thornwick." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of perfect California winter day that made tourists forget the state had seasons at all. Ilara woke at 500, ran 3 miles around the lake, ate a protein bar, and drank 2 bottles of water. Hydration and physical readiness mattered. Reaper had insisted on it. A tired body made a sloppy mind, and a sloppy mind missed shots. She loaded her truck and made the 90-minute drive to Naval Base San Diego, arriving at 0645. The range was already active. 31 shooters had qualified from day one. This morning would winnow that number down further. The setup was different this time. 3 separate firing points, each with its own set of targets at varying distances. 800 yards, 900 yards, 1,000 yards. And unlike day one, the conditions were going to change throughout the morning. The wind was already gusting, flags snapping on their poles. The temperature was supposed to climb into the high 80s by noon, creating heat mirage that would make ranging and shot placement significantly harder. This was where shooters started to separate. This was where skill showed. Ilara checked in, drew her lane assignment, number 17 this time, and set up her equipment. The M24 came out of its case looking exactly as it always did. Worn, but immaculate. Ready. Around her, other shooters were doing the same. She recognized most of them now. Hawk was 3 lanes down, running through his pre-shoot checklist with methodical precision. Gunnery Sergeant Cole, the Marine who'd shot perfect on day one, was on Ilara's left. Lieutenant Brennan from SEAL Team 7 was on her right. Brennan glanced over, saw her, and offered a nod. Not quite friendly, but no longer condescending either. "Morning, Thornwick." "Morning, sir." "Hell of a performance last week." "Thank you, sir. You too." "Yeah, well, today's going to be different. This is where we see who can really shoot and who just got lucky." He said it casually, but there was an edge to his voice, testing her, seeing if she'd react. Ilara kept her face neutral. "I guess we'll find out." 5 lanes down, Derek Stone was setting up his equipment. Ilara could feel his eyes on her, even when she wasn't looking. The weight of his attention was almost physical, pressing against her like humidity before a storm. Admiral Blackwell appeared on the range at 0730 with his megaphone and a tablet computer. "Good morning, shooters. Welcome to day 2. Here's how this works. 3 stages. Stage 1, 800 yards, 3 shots. Stage 2, 900 yards, 3 shots with active wind conditions. Stage 3, 1,000 yards, 4 shots at moving targets. Total possible score, 100 points. Top 10 advance to day 3. Questions?" A hand went up. Staff Sergeant Miller from SEAL Team 7. "Sir, what's the wind speed we're looking at?" Blackwell checked his tablet. "Currently gusting 8 to 12 miles per hour from the southwest. Expected to increase to 12 to 15 by stage 3. Murmurs ran through the group. 12 to 15 at 1,000 yards was serious wind. That could push a bullet off course by several feet if you didn't calculate correctly. Blackwell continued. "One more thing. Moving targets in stage 3 will be traveling at approximately 2 miles per hour. Human walking speed. You'll have 30 seconds to engage each target once it enters your field of view. Miss your window, miss the shot. This is about speed and accuracy under pressure. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Outstanding. Relay 1 to the line." Ilara was in Relay 3. She had time to observe, to see how others handled the conditions, to learn the range before she had to perform on it. Relay 1 moved to their positions. 10 shooters. Stage 1, 800 yards. The targets were standard military silhouettes, 18 by 30 inches, a human torso. At 800 yards, they looked impossibly small through the scope. Relay 1, make ready. The familiar sounds. Bolts, magazines, breathing. Relay 1, commence firing. Ilara watched through her spotting scope. The wind was tricky, switching direction every few seconds. She saw one shooter's first round land a foot left of target. He'd overcorrected for wind. Another shooter's round hit low. Insufficient elevation adjustment. But most of them were good. These were professionals. They knew their craft. By the end of stage 1, most shooters had posted 28 to 30 points out of a possible 30. 3 had perfect scores. Relay 2 fired, more of the same. High scores, a few mistakes but not many. Then Relay 3 was called. Elara moved to lane 17, set up, and waited. The wind had picked up slightly since Relay 1. She could feel it on her face, see it in the grass between her position and the target. 12 miles per hour, maybe 13, from 2 o'clock. At 800 yards, a 12-mile-per-hour crosswind would push a 300 Winchester Magnum round approximately 16 inches off course. She needed to aim 16 inches into the wind to compensate. Blackwell's voice cut through her calculations. Relay 3, make ready. Elara chambered around. Safety off. Eye to scope. The target filled her field of view. She adjusted her point of aim. 16 inches right, accounting for the wind pushing her bullet left. Relay 3, commence firing. First shot. The rifle kicked. Through the scope, she saw the bullet strike true. 10 ring. Work the bolt. Second round. Same wind, same correction. Squeeze. Bullseye. Third round. But the wind had shifted. She could feel it. Now it was coming from 3 o'clock instead of 2. 15 miles per hour instead of 12. She adjusted on the fly. 20 inches right instead of 16. Squeeze. Clean hit. Elara made the rifle safe and waited. Around her, other shooters finished their strings. The scores posted. Shooter 17. 30 out of 30. Perfect. Only 4 perfect scores in stage 1. Elara was one of them. The other 3 were Hawk, Cole, and a SEAL operator named Chief Jackson, who Elara didn't know well. Stage 2 started immediately. 900 yards, wind conditions. This was where things got interesting. At 900 yards, that same 15-mile-per-hour wind would push the bullet nearly 24 inches off course. And the wind wasn't steady anymore. It was gusting, swirling, unpredictable. You couldn't just calculate once and shoot. You had to read the wind for every single shot, adjust in real time, trust your instincts. This was art as much as science. Reaper had called it speaking to the wind. You had to listen to what it was telling you and respond. Relay 1 struggled. Elara watched shooters miss by inches, by feet. The wind was eating them alive. By the end of stage 2, only 2 shooters had perfect scores, Hawk and Cole. Relay 2 did marginally better. 1 perfect score, Lieutenant Brennan. Derek Stone was in Relay 2. Elara watched him shoot. His first shot at 900 yards hit low and right, 6 points instead of 10. His second shot missed completely, 0 points. His third shot was a solid hit, 10 points, 16 out of 30. Stone was falling apart. The pressure was getting to him. Relay 3 moved to the line. Elara took her position, checked the wind flags, felt the breeze on her face. The wind was worse now, gusting between 12 and 18 miles per hour, variable direction. This was going to require every bit of skill Reaper had drilled into her. Relay 3, make ready. Elara chambered her first round. Through the scope, the target at 900 yards looked like a postage stamp. She watched the mirage, the heat waves rising from the ground between her and the target. The mirage was boiling hard to the right. That meant wind from the left, strong wind. She held her crosshairs 28 inches left of center, accounting for the wind pushing right. Relay 3, commence firing. First shot. The recoil, the weight, impact, center mass. But she didn't have time to celebrate. The wind had already changed. Now it was coming from behind her, quartering from 7 o'clock. That would give her bullet a tailwind, slightly increase its velocity, and push it right and high. Second shot. Adjust. Aim low left to compensate. Squeeze. 10-ring hit. Third shot. Wind shift again. Now straight crosswind from 9 o'clock. Ilara made her correction, aimed right, and fired. Bullseye. Perfect. 30 out of 30. The scores posted. Only 3 perfect scores in Stage 2 across all relays. Hawk, Cole, and Ilara Thornwick. Ilara heard someone behind her say, "Jesus Christ, she's for real." Lieutenant Brennan, 2 lanes over, looked at her with an expression that wasn't quite respect and wasn't quite resentment. Maybe both. "Where the hell did you learn to read wind like that?" Ilara looked at him. "My father, sir. He spent 30 years doing this." "Reaper." "Yes, sir." Brennan shook his head. "I heard the stories, thought they were exaggerated." "They weren't, sir." Stage 3 was the crucible. 1,000 yards, moving targets, 4 shots, 30 seconds per target. This was where Day 2 would be decided. Blackwell explained the scenario. 4 human-shaped targets would move laterally across the range at walking speed, approximately 2 miles per hour. Each target would be visible for roughly 45 seconds, but shooters only had 30 seconds from when the target entered their lane to take the shot. Miss your window? Get a 0 for that target. It was a simulation of real combat conditions. Targets didn't stand still. Enemy combatants moved. Snipers had to calculate not just where the target was, but where it would be when the bullet arrived. At 1,000 yards, a .300 Winchester Magnum bullet took approximately 1.4 seconds to reach the target. In 1.4 seconds, a person walking at 2 miles per hour would travel about 4 feet. You had to aim 4 feet ahead of where they were and trust that physics and timing would intersect perfectly. Reaper had trained Ilara on moving targets since she was 17. He'd made her calculate the math 1,000 times. Lead distance, angular velocity, time of flight. It was all second nature now, but knowing the math and executing under pressure were 2 different things. Relay 1 moved to the line. Ilara watched the first shooter engage. He fired at the first moving target. Miss. The bullet hit the berm behind where the target had been. He'd led too much. Second target, miss again. Third target, hit, but low and right. Fourth target, miss. 8 points out of 40 possible. Brutal. The rest of Relay 1 didn't fare much better. Moving targets at 1,000 yards with variable wind was nightmare fuel. Only 3 shooters out of 10 managed more than 20 points. The highest score was Chief Jackson with 32 out of 40, 3 hits, 1 miss. Relay 2 showed similar results. Even experienced SEAL snipers were struggling with the complexity of the shot. Hawk posted 36 out of 40, 3 solid hits, 1 miss. Cole managed 32. Derek Stone posted 24 out of 40, 2 hits, 2 misses. His face was red, his jaw clenched. He was spiraling. By the time Relay 3 was called, the pressure was immense. Ilara could feel it, thick in the air like humidity before a storm. This was where reputations were made or destroyed. This was the shot that would determine who advanced and who went home. Ilara took her position at lane 17 for the last time today. 1,000 yards downrange, she could see the mechanism that would move the targets. 4 tracks, targets mounted on motorized sleds. Simple in concept, devastating in execution. She did the math one more time. 1,000 yards, bullet flight time, 1.4 seconds. Target speed, 2 miles per hour equals 3 feet per second. Distance traveled during flight, 4.2 feet. Add wind correction. 15 mile per hour crosswind would push the bullet 32 inches right. So she needed to aim 4.2 feet ahead of the target and 32 inches left of center to account for drift. 4 feet ahead, 32 inches left. Trust the math, trust the training. Blackwell's voice. Relay 3, make ready. First target will begin movement in 10 seconds. Ilara chambered around, found her natural point of aim, controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, became still. The first target began moving left to right across her field of view. Walking speed, steady pace. Ilara tracked it with her scope, letting it move ahead, calculating the lead distance. 4 feet ahead, 32 inches left. Crosshairs settled on empty space in front of the target. Squeeze. The rifle spoke. Ilara worked the bolt immediately, already tracking for the second shot, but kept one eye on the first target. 1.4 seconds. Impact. Center mass. No time to celebrate. Second target already moving, right to left this time, which meant she had to lead in the opposite direction and adjust for wind pushing the other way. 4 feet ahead, 32 inches right this time. Squeeze. Work the bolt. Impact. Bullseye. Third target left to right again, but the wind had picked up. She could feel it stronger now. 18 miles per hour. That changed the math. 38 inches of drift instead of 32. 4 feet ahead. 38 inches left. Squeeze. Work the bolt. Impact. True. Fourth and final target. Right to left. Wind still strong. Ilara was in a rhythm now. The rifle an extension of her body. The calculations happening faster than conscious thought. This was what Reaper had trained her for. This was what 10,000 hours of practice had built. 4 feet ahead, 38 inches right. Squeeze. The rifle kicked one last time. Ilara didn't need to check. She knew. The same way a baseball player knows when they've hit a home run before the ball clears the fence. You can feel it in your bones when everything is perfect. Impact. 10 ring. Ilara made the rifle safe, set it down gently, and allowed herself to breathe. 4 for 4. Perfect score on the hardest stage of the competition so far. The scores posted. The range fell silent. Shooter 17, 40 over 40. The only perfect score in stage 3. The only perfect score across all 3 stages of day 2. Ilara Thornwick had just shot 100 out of 100 possible points. Blackwell's voice came over the loudspeaker, quiet and measured. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed the first perfect score in the history of Operation Spear Tip. Day 2, Ilara Thornwick, 100 out of 100. The silence broke. Not with applause, this was a military competition, not a sporting event, but with a murmur of voices. Disbelief and respect mixing in equal measure. Hawk was the first to reach her. He extended his hand, his weathered face showing genuine admiration. That was extraordinary shooting, Miss Thornwick. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone shoot moving targets like that at 1,000 yards. Reaper trained you to be better than the rest of us. You just proved he succeeded. Ilara shook his hand, felt tears threatening but forced them down. Thank you, Master Chief. Cole approached next, the Marine Scout sniper who'd been one of the favorites. Ma'am, that was beyond impressive. I don't know what Reaper taught you, but whatever it was, it worked. Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. Other shooters came by, offering respect, asking questions. How did you calculate that fast? How did you read the wind? Where did you train? Ilara answered politely, but didn't give away any secrets. Reaper had taught her that too. Never explain your edge. Let your work speak for itself. Lieutenant Brennan approached, his expression complicated, pride and something like regret. Thornwick, I owe you more than an apology. I didn't think you belonged here. I was wrong. You're the best shooter on this range today by a considerable margin. He paused. But day 3 is going to be different. 1,200 to 1,400 yards, extreme long range. That's where most people fall apart. The distances are so far, the variables so complex, that even elite snipers struggle. I understand, sir. Do you? Brennan leaned in slightly. At 1,400 yards, you're shooting almost a mile. The bullet drops 40 feet. The wind drift can be 8 feet or more. The Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation becomes a major factor. It's not just shooting anymore. It's physics and prayer. Ilara thought about that buck in the Mojave. 1,856 yards. The longest shot she'd ever attempted. The shot that had proved to herself that Reaper's training had made her into something exceptional. "I'll manage, sir." Brennan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you will. See you next Saturday, Thornwick. It's going to be one hell of a show." Blackwell called everyone together for the final announcements. "Well done, shooters. The top 10 advancing to Day 3 are posted on the board. Day 3 will be next Saturday, 0800 hours. Extreme long range, 1,200, 1,300, and 1,400 yards. Bring everything you've got, because this is where champions are made." Dismissed. Ilara checked the leaderboard. 1. Ilara Thornwick, 100 out of 100. 2. Master Chief Marcus Crawford, 96 out of 100. 3. Gunnery Sergeant Cole, 92 out of 100. 4. Lieutenant Colt Brennan, 90 over 100. 5. Chief Jackson, 88 over 100. 6. Staff Sergeant Miller, 86 over 100. 7. Lieutenant Reeves, 84 over 100. 8. Petty Officer Walsh, 82 over 100. 9. Captain Morrison, Army Ranger, 80 over 100. 10. Lieutenant Commander Stevens, 78 over 100. Derek Stone's name wasn't on the list. He'd posted a combined score of 82 out of 100, which put him at 11th place. Out of the competition. Eliminated. Ilara hadn't even noticed him leave the range, but as she turned to pack her equipment, she saw him. Stone stood alone near the parking lot, leaning against his truck, watching the range. Their eyes met across 50 yards of California dust. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Stone pushed off his truck and walked toward her. Ilara's hand instinctively moved toward her rifle case, but his body language wasn't aggressive. He looked defeated, older somehow, as if the competition had aged him years in a weekend. He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to be respectful. "I owe you an apology," Stone said. His voice was rough, like the words were being dragged out of him against his will. "For everything, the intimidation, the other things." Ilara said nothing, just waited. "I've spent my whole life blaming your father for mine," Stone continued. "Mogadishu, the shot he didn't take. I convinced myself that if Reaper had pulled the trigger, my dad would still be alive." He looked at the ground. "But I read the after-action report, really read it. 60 civilians in that marketplace, children. Your father made the right call." "I know," Ilara said quietly. "The ambush that killed my dad wasn't because a warlord survived. It was bad intelligence and a betrayed asset. Nothing to do with your father." Stone's jaw clenched. "I wasted 20 years hating a man who probably saved innocent lives that day. And then I tried to destroy his daughter because I couldn't accept that I was wrong." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is a letter. Written statement admitting I cloned your credentials, tried to frame you. I'm submitting it to the base security office tomorrow. I'll probably face court-martial. I deserve it." Ilara took the envelope, surprised. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because watching you shoot today, I saw your father. The discipline, the skill, the responsibility." Stone's voice cracked. "He trained you to be better than he was. And you honored that. You honored him. I dishonored mine by using him as an excuse for my own bitterness." He snapped to attention, rendered a crisp salute. "Your father was a hero, and so are you. I'm sorry I couldn't see that until it was too late." Ilara returned the salute slowly. "My father would tell you that you're still alive, which means it's not too late. You can choose who you want to be from here forward." Stone nodded, lowered his salute. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you won. Really glad. Reaper's legacy is in good hands." He turned and walked back to his truck. Ilara watched him go, envelope in hand. She could turn it in, end his career, get justice for the sabotage. Or she could do what Reaper would do. She opened the envelope, read the confession, then walked to a trash barrel and dropped it in. Stone, halfway to his truck, saw her do it. He stopped, turned back, confusion on his face. Elara called across the distance. "Lieutenant Stone, you want to honor your father's memory? Stop living in the past. Start living for the future. That's what Reaper taught me." Something in Stone's expression shifted. Not quite gratitude, not quite relief, but maybe hope. He nodded once, got in his truck, and drove away. Hawk appeared beside Elara, watching Stone's taillights disappear. "You just let him walk." "He let himself walk. I just gave him the chance to choose a different path." "Reaper would have done the same thing." Hawk smiled. "You really are his daughter." As she packed up her equipment, Admiral Blackwell approached. He'd been watching from the tower all day, observing every shot through high-powered binoculars. "Miss Thornwick, a word." "Yes, sir." Blackwell waited until they were out of earshot of the other competitors. His expression was serious, almost grave. "That was remarkable shooting today, the moving targets especially. I've seen a lot of snipers in my career, a lot of very good snipers. What you did today was at the level of the best I've ever seen." He paused. "Do you understand what that means?" Elara wasn't sure how to answer. "Sir, it means I've got the attention of people who matter. Naval Special Warfare Command is watching this competition closely. We're always looking for talent, for people who can do things others can't." Blackwell's eyes held hers. "When this is over, regardless of how you place, there will be opportunities if you want them." "What kind of opportunities, sir?" "The kind your father had, the kind that matter." Blackwell glanced around, making sure they were still alone. "But first, you've got to finish what you started. Day 3 is going to test you in ways you haven't been tested yet. Not just your skills, but your mind, your composure. Can you handle that?" Elara thought about Reaper's last words to her. "Don't waste it. Make them see." "Yes, sir. I can handle it." Blackwell smiled slightly. "I believe you can. But there's something you should know. That rifle you're shooting, Reaper's M24, I was there when it was issued to him. Kuwait, January 1991. We were preparing for the ground invasion. Reaper had just transferred to our team from Team 5. He showed up with his gear and that rifle, and the first thing he did was go out to the range and put 10 rounds through the same hole at 1,000 yards. I'd never seen anything like it." Elara felt her throat tighten. "He never told me that story." Reaper didn't tell a lot of stories, but he made damn sure his skills lived on. Blackwell put a hand on Elara's shoulder, a rare gesture of familiarity from a flag officer. "That rifle has been in combat in 15 countries. It's saved countless lives, and now it's in your hands. Use it well, Elara. Honor what it represents." "I will, sir. I promise." Blackwell nodded and walked away, leaving Elara standing alone on the range, with the sun climbing toward noon and the wind still gusting across the empty lanes. She looked down at the M24 in its case. The metal showed years of wear, the wood grain darkened by oil and time. A tool that had seen more than most soldiers ever would. A responsibility passed down through blood and training. Reaper's voice whispered in her memory. "That rifle is more than a weapon, Elara. It's a promise. Every time you shoot it, you're promising to be worthy of the trust someone put in you. Don't ever break that promise." Elara closed the case gently, reverently. "I won't, Dad. I swear I won't." The drive back to Lake Arrowhead felt longer than usual. Elara's mind was racing, replaying every shot from the day, analyzing what had gone right and what could be improved. Perfect score or not, there was always room to be better. That was Reaper's philosophy, and it had become hers. By the time she reached the cabin, the sun was setting. She carried the M24 inside, down to the basement, and began the cleaning ritual. Strip, inspect, clean, lubricate, reassemble. The meditation of maintenance. As she worked, Elara thought about day 3, extreme long range, 1,200 to 1,400 yards. Brennan had been right. That was where things got truly difficult. At those distances, you weren't just fighting the wind and the bullet drop, you were fighting the Earth itself. The Coriolis effect, the rotation of the planet, would push the bullet noticeably right in the northern hemisphere. Temperature variations between the firing point and the target could change the air density enough to affect trajectory. Even the angle of the sun could create optical distortions that made ranging difficult. But Reaper had trained her for exactly this. She'd shot 1,500 yards, 1,800 yards. She knew what extreme distance felt like, how the rifle behaved, how the math got more complex and the margin for error shrank to nothing. She could do this. She would do this. Ilara finished cleaning the rifle, carried it back upstairs, and set it in its case by the door. Tomorrow was Sunday. She'd spend the day at her private range in the desert, shooting long range, confirming her data, making sure everything was perfect. But tonight she allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. 100 out of 100. Perfect score. The first in competition history. Reaper would have been proud. Hell, he was probably up there somewhere laughing, saying, "I told you so," to anyone who'd listen. Ilara smiled, raised a glass of water in silent toast to the old man who'd made her into what she was, and spoke to the empty cabin. "Day 3, Dad. That's when I show them what you really taught me. That's when I prove I'm not just good, I'm the best." The cabin didn't answer, but Ilara swore she could feel a presence, warm and familiar, like Reaper was standing right behind her, hand on her shoulder, ready to guide her through whatever came next. Ready or not, day 3 was coming, and Ilara Thornwick intended to make history. Monday morning arrived with fog rolling in from the coast, thick and gray. Ilara drove to the base through the murk, her mind already on the week ahead. Training, preparation, final checks. When she arrived at Building 7, everything seemed normal. Her desk was undisturbed. Her computer exactly as she'd left it Friday afternoon. She settled into work, grateful that the sabotage attempts seemed to have ended with Stone's elimination. Tuesday and Wednesday passed without incident. Ilara trained in the desert, shot 1,200 and 1,400 yards until she could make the calculations in her sleep. Thursday, she ran security checks on all her equipment. Everything was clean. Friday afternoon, as she was leaving the base, a black SUV pulled up beside her truck. The window rolled down. Admiral Blackwell. "Miss Thornwick, get in. We need to talk." Ilara's heart sank. Had something else happened? Was she being disqualified? She climbed into the SUV. Blackwell drove to a quiet corner of the base, parked, and turned to face her. "What I'm about to tell you is classified, top secret. You understand?" "Yes, sir." Operation Spear Tip wasn't just a competition, it was a recruitment test. We've been planning a special operation for 6 months. We needed someone with a very specific skill set, someone who could make surgical precision shots at extreme distance, someone with intelligence background, someone who could operate independently. Ilara's pulse quickened. "What kind of operation, sir?" Blackwell pulled out a tablet, brought up a satellite image. A compound in the mountains, rugged terrain. 3 months ago, naval intelligence identified a high-value target, Khalid Zarif, terrorist network leader, responsible for 17 attacks on U.S. forces over the past decade, 237 casualties. He's operating from this compound in the Hindu Kush Mountains, along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Ilara studied the image. Remote, heavily defended. "The only approach is from this ridge." Blackwell zoomed in. "Distance to target, 1,943 yards, just over 1.1 miles, beyond the range of our standard sniper teams. We've been waiting for someone who could make that shot, someone who could guarantee first-round hit at that distance." He looked at Ilara directly. "We think you're that person." Ilara's mind raced. This was what Reaper had been preparing her for. All those years of training, all those hours on the range, this was the mission. "When, sir?" 3 months from now, February. But first, you need to finish what you started. Win spear tip. Prove to everyone, including yourself, that you're ready for this. Blackwell handed her an envelope. Your father knew about this operation. In 2017, we offered him the mission. He turned it down. Cancer diagnosis came a month later. By 2018, he knew he wouldn't live to do it. Ilara opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter in Reaper's handwriting. She read it through tears. Ilara, it began, if you're reading this, Blackwell gave you the letter. Means you won spear tip. Means you're ready. Everything I taught you wasn't random. I was preparing you for this mission, the one I couldn't complete. The target, Khalid Zarif, terrorist mastermind. 23 attacks on U.S. forces, 200+ casualties. He's the one who ordered the operation that killed your mother and father in 2008. I've spent 10 years tracking him. Now he's in play, and you're the only one who can reach him. This is your choice. I won't force you from beyond the grave. But know this, if you take the shot, you'll avenge your parents, save hundreds of lives, and complete what I started. You're not just my niece. You're the best operator I ever trained. Better than I ever was. Trust yourself, trust your training, and if you decide to serve, know I'll be watching over you. Always. Semper Fi, Reaper. Ilara looked up at Blackwell, her vision blurred. My parents, Zarif ordered their deaths? Blackwell nodded. Your father was CIA, tracking Zarif's financial networks. Your mother was NSA, cracking his communications. They were close to identifying his location in 2008. He had them killed, made it look like an accident. How long have you known? Since Reaper told me. He made me promise not to tell you until you were ready. Until now. Ilara folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope. Everything made sense now. Reaper's intensity, the training, the secrecy. Her parents didn't die in an accident. They were murdered. And Reaper had spent 11 years preparing her to finish what they'd started. I don't need time, Admiral. I'm in. When do we deploy? 3 months from now, you'll train with Hawk and SEAL Team 3. But first, you need to win the competition. Day 3 is tomorrow. Are you ready? Ilara thought about the M24, about Reaper's hands on that rifle for 30 years, about her parents murdered by the man she'd be sent to kill. I'm ready, sir. Saturday morning dawned clear and perfect. Ilara arrived at the range at 06:30. Hawk was already there, standing guard over her equipment. Morning, Ilara. Nothing's been touched. I've been here since 0600. Thank you, Hawk. The final 10 shooters gathered. The crowd was larger today, 500 spectators, media cameras. This was the championship. This was where legends were made. Blackwell took the microphone. Good morning, shooters. Welcome to Day 3, Extreme Long Range. This is where we separate the good from the great. 3 stages, 1,200 yards, 2 shots. 1,300 yards, 2 shots. 1,400 yards, 1 shot. Total possible, 50 points. Highest combined score across all 3 days wins. Good luck. Stage 1, 1,200 yards, went smoothly. Ilara shot flawlessly, 20 out of 20. So did Hawk. Cole dropped 1 shot, posting 18. The wind was building. By stage 2, it was gusting at 12 miles per hour with heat mirage rippling across the range. 1,300 yards pushed everyone to their limits. Stage 2, 1,300 yards, was harder. Wind had picked up. Heat mirage was brutal. Hawk maintained his perfect streak. 20 out of 20. Ilara matched him. Her combined score, 40 out of 40 across 2 stages. Cole struggled, posting 16 out of 20. Brennan managed 18. The field was separating. Then came stage 3, 1,400 yards, 1 shot, winner take all. The first 6 shooters went. Most posted solid hits, scoring 8 to 10 points. Only Hawk managed a perfect bullseye. His combined score, 50 out of 50 across all three stages of day 3. 196 out of 200 total across all 3 days. The crowd murmured. Hawk had just posted the highest score in spear tip history. Beating it would require perfection. Ilara was shooter 7. She moved to lane 17 for the final time. 1,400 yards, nearly 8/10 of a mile. The target looked like a grain of rice through her scope. She ran the calculations. 41.2 MOA elevation. Wind 12 miles per hour from 8 o'clock. 34 inches drift. Temperature 79 degrees. Coriolis effect, 0.8 MOA right. Bullet flight time, 5.1 seconds. She dialed in the numbers, found her natural point of aim, controlled her breathing, slowed her heart. This was it. Everything Reaper had taught her, everything she'd practiced, everything she'd become, all of it came down to this one shot. She thought about her parents, about Reaper, about the mission waiting 3 months from now, about Zarif on a balcony in Afghanistan. Not where the target is, Reaper's voice whispered, where God and physics say it's going to be. Between heartbeats, Ilara squeezed the trigger. The M24 spoke. 5.1 seconds. The crowd held its breath. Ping! The distinctive sound of lead striking steel echoed across the range. Bullseye. Perfect. 50 out of 50 on day 3. 150 out of 150 across all 3 days. Perfect score. Mathematically impossible to beat. The crowd erupted. Hawk lifted her off the ground in a fierce hug. You transcended everything, Ilara. Everything your father taught you. You just made history. Blackwell presented her with the trophy, the $50,000 check, and then, privately, an envelope. Your orders. Report to SEAL Team 3 training compound Monday morning. You've got 12 weeks to prepare for Afghanistan. Don't waste them. That night, alone in the cabin, Ilara stood in the basement holding the M24. Tomorrow she'd start training for the real mission, the one that mattered. She whispered to the rifle, Dad, I'm going to finish what you started, what Mom and Dad started. I promise. And somewhere in the darkness, she swore she heard Reaper's voice one last time. That's my girl. Now go make them remember the name Thornwick. 3 months of training blurred together. SEAL Team 3 compound, high-altitude conditioning, cold weather survival, helicopter insertions, and shooting. Always shooting. 1,200 yards, 1,500, 1,800. Ilara pushed past every limit Reaper had set, discovering reserves of capability even he hadn't known she possessed. Hawk was with her every step. Spotter, mentor, guardian. The man who'd lain beside Reaper in Desert Storm now lay beside Reaper's daughter, passing down wisdom earned in blood across 5 wars. Your father would be proud, he'd said on the last day of training, watching Ilara put 5 rounds through a 6-inch circle at 1,800 yards in gusting mountain winds. Hell, he'd be jealous. Now, 3 months later, Ilara lay on a ridge in the Hindu Kush Mountains, 9,200 feet above sea level. The air was thin enough to make every breath deliberate. The temperature hovered at 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind gusted at 15 to 18 miles per hour from the northwest, carrying the smell of snow from peaks that scraped the sky. 1,943 yards downrange, Khalid Zarif's compound clung to a cliff face like a wasp's nest. Mud brick walls, guard towers, razor wire, and somewhere inside, the man who'd murdered her parents 16 years ago. Ilara had been in position for 8 hours. Inserted by helicopter at 0200, she and Hawk had hiked 3 miles through mountain terrain in darkness, reached this ridge at 0430, and waited. SEAL Team 3 was 2 kilometers away, ready to raid the compound the moment Ilara's shot confirmed Zarif was down. The waiting was the hardest part. Reaper had warned her about this. In position, your mind becomes the enemy. It wanders. It doubts. It creates scenarios where you fail. You have to quiet it. Focus on the mission. Nothing else exists. Through her scope, Ilara could see the balcony where intelligence said Zarif appeared every morning at 0600 local time. 5 minutes. That was her window. The only time he exposed himself. The only shot she'd get. 15 minutes, Hawk whispered beside her, checking his watch. His breath came out in white puffs, immediately torn away by the wind. Ilara nodded. Her hands were steady despite the cold. The M24 rested on its bipod, barrel cold-soaked to ambient temperature. Reaper had taught her to zero the rifle at whatever temperature she'd be shooting. Yesterday she'd confirmed zero at 15 degrees, 9,000 feet altitude. The rifle was ready. The question was she? "Talk to me," Hawk said quietly. "What are you thinking?" "That this is a human being I'm about to kill." "Good. You should be thinking that. Your father always did." Hawk adjusted his spotting scope. "But remember why you're here. Zarif ordered the hit on your parents. He's responsible for 237 American casualties. If you don't take this shot, he'll kill 200 more. Ilara closed her eyes, saw her mother's face, her father's smile. The funeral she'd attended at 11 years old, standing alone because everyone else at the service was agency, and they couldn't acknowledge her existence. Saw Reaper, dying in that hospice bed, whispering his final mission to her. She opened her eyes. "I'm ready." "Wind check," Hawk said, all business now. He read his Kestrel weather meter. 16 miles per hour, steady from 11 o'clock. Temperature 14 degrees. Barometric pressure 26.2. Humidity 18%. Ilara ran the math. 1,943 yards. Bullet drop 49.7 MOA. Wind drift at 16 miles per hour from 11 o'clock. 42 inches left. Coriolis effect 1.3 MOA right. Temperature effect. Cold air was denser, would slow the bullet fractionally at 0.4 MOA drop. Altitude. Thin air reduced drag, flattened trajectory, subtract 0.6 MOA. Net correction. 49.5 MOA elevation. Hold 42 inches left of center. Account for 1.3 MOA Coriolis drift right. She dialed the elevation. Her hands moved with practiced certainty. This was what 10,000 hours looked like. This was mastery. 5 minutes, Hawk said. Target building shows lights. Movement inside. Ilara's breathing slowed. 4 count in. Hold. 4 count out. Hold. Her heart rate dropped. 58 beats per minute. 52. 48. 2 minutes. Balcony door activity. The compound below looked peaceful in the dawn light. Smoke rising from chimneys. Guards changing shifts. A village 400 meters away. Civilians beginning their day. Children probably. Farmers. People who had nothing to do with terrorism. Reaper's voice. The hardest shots aren't the ones where you might miss. They're the ones where you might hit the wrong person. Ilara checked her sight picture one more time. The balcony was clear. No civilians, no guards, just the door. 30 seconds, door opening. Khalid Zarif stepped onto the balcony. Ilara could see him clearly through the 16-time scope. Mid-50s, gray beard, white robes. He stretched, breathed deep mountain air, looked out over his domain. The man who destroyed her family. Wind holding steady, 16 miles per hour, 11 o'clock. Range confirmed, 1943, you have the shot. Ilara's crosshairs settled on empty air, 42 inches left of Zarif's chest, accounting for wind drift. She exhaled halfway, held it, found the space between heartbeats. Thought about her mother, cracking terrorist codes at NSA. Her father, hunting terrorist networks for CIA. Reaper, training her for this exact moment. 237 American soldiers who died because of this man. 200 more who'd die if she missed. Send it, Hawk whispered. Between heartbeats, Ilara squeezed. The M24 spoke for the 48th time in combat. The suppressor reduced the crack to a sound that wouldn't carry past this ridge. The 300 Winchester Magnum round left the barrel at 2,820 feet per second, slowed by the cold, dense air. Time to target, 6.2 seconds. Ilara didn't blink, kept the scope on target. Watched the bullet arc across impossible distance, fighting wind and gravity and the rotation of the Earth itself. 6.2 seconds felt like forever. Then Khalid Zarif's chest exploded. He jerked backward, slammed against the wall behind him, slid down, leaving a red smear. Hit, Hawk confirmed through his spotting scope. Center mass, target down, he's not getting up. Ilara chambered a second round. Standard protocol, always be ready for follow-up. But there was no movement from the balcony. Zarif wasn't moving. Hawk keyed his radio. Overwatch to strike team. Jackpot. Repeat, jackpot. Target confirmed down. You are cleared hot. 2 kilometers away, SEAL Team 3 launched their assault. Ilara heard the helicopters spooling up, the distant crack of breaching charges. She made the M24 safe, rolled away from her position. Her hands were shaking now. Adrenaline and cold and the weight of what she'd just done. You okay? Hawk asked. Ilara nodded, then shook her head. I just killed a man. You just saved hundreds of lives, and you avenged your parents. There's a weight to that, always will be, but it's a weight worth carrying. The SEAL team cleared the compound in 12 minutes. Zarif was dead. His second in command, dead. Computers and documents seized. Intelligence that would dismantle the entire network. Extraction came at 700. Helicopter ride back to base. Debrief. Blackwell congratulating her personally. Longest confirmed kill shot by a U.S. military sniper in this theater. 1,943 yards. Your father's record was 2,100 in Kuwait. You're close. But Ilara didn't care about records. She cared that the man who'd murdered her family was dead, that the mission was complete, that Reaper's legacy lived on. 6 months later, she stood in front of a class of SEAL candidates at Naval Special Warfare Center, Lieutenant Ilara Thornwick on her nameplate, combat action ribbon and bronze star on her chest beside Reaper's dog tags. The M24 rested on the table beside her. This rifle is 36 years old, she told the class. Serial number ST3-0847. It was issued to my father in 1988. He carried it for 25 years. It's killed 48 enemy combatants across 6 wars. The last one was 6 months ago in Afghanistan. She picked up the rifle, held it with the reverence it deserved. My father taught me that shooting isn't about the rifle. It's about responsibility. Every shot carries weight. The weight of the lives you take, the weight of the lives you save, and the weight of the legacy you choose to honor. She set the rifle down gently. Today I'm going to teach you what my father taught me. How to make shots that shouldn't be possible. How to quiet your mind when chaos surrounds you. How to become the weapon. The students leaned forward, ready to learn. And somewhere in the mountain wind outside, Ilara swore she could hear Reaper's voice one last time. That's my girl. You made them remember the name Thornwick. The rifle had spoken. The legacy was secure. And Ilara Thornwick, Reaper's daughter, had become something even her father hadn't imagined. Not just a sniper, but a teacher who would pass the gift forward to the next generation. The mission was complete, but the story was just beginning.